We are tracing the teak-ribbed hulls of ancient India's dhows as they harness the seasonal monsoon wind to dominate the Indian oceans. By examining the stitch, joinery, and celestial navigation, we reconstruct how these master shipbuilders outpaced the Roman fleet and establishing the primary maritime arteries that connected the distant civilization long before the colonial age. What if I told you that the ancient Indian maritime technology was centuries ahead of Roman Empire? By perfecting the art of teak-ribbed hulls, these master builders established the primary maritime arteries that still shape global trade today. To discover how their revolutionary navigation techniques connected distant civilization while the other was still hugging the shoreline. So let's find out more. So, hello friends, in 2025, off the coast of Kerala, divers stumbled upon a revelation that shook the foundation of maritime history. The remains of ancient Indian hulls, astonishingly larger and more durable than their Roman counterparts. These timber preserved by salt and slit whispered of a forgotten fleet that once ruled the ocean. The mystery deepened when the archaeologists realized these ships had crossed 3,000 miles of open water without a single metal nails, crafted instead with ingenious wooden joinery and coconut fiber lashing that flexed with the wave rather than breaking against them. While the Mediterranean vessels clung nervously off the coastline, then inching from port to port, Indian dhows sprinted boldly across the deep ocean. So these captains trusted the monsoon winds long before the Greek or Roman navigator recorded them. So the so-called Hippolytus wind pattern, named centuries later by outsiders, were already mastered by Indian sailors who timed their voyage with precision, turning the Indian Ocean into a predictable two-way highway. So the secret lay in the physics of the sails, and a triangular marvel that allowed ships to tack against the wind. With these innovations, Indian vessels could slice diagonally across the currents, harnessing the monsoon's rhythm to sail out in one season and return to another. This mastery of seasonal wind was not just technical brilliance. It was a heartbeat of global spice trade. Pepper, cinnamon, and cardamom flowed along these routes, dictating the wealth of empire from Rome to China. Navigation was no less revolutionary. The kamal, a simple wooden tool with a string and a bead, allowed sailors to measure the altitude of pole stars, giving them a precise latitude centuries before the sextant was imagined. The ancient Vedic astronomical texts, once used for ritual timing, were repurposed into a practical maritime charts. So these guides identified safe deep water corridors, enabling Indian captains to bypass the treacherous coastline and storms. In doing so, they laid the foundation for world's first global trade hubs. From Muzeris in Kerala to Lothal in Gujarat, Indian ports became crossroads of civilizations. Roman gold flowed eastwards, Chinese silk westward, and Indian spices northwards, weaving together the Roman Empire and the Han dynasty through the maritime arteries. So these routes were not accidental. They were engineered by generations of Indian sea surfers who understood the ocean as intimidating as farmers understood as soil, you know. So the DNA of these shipbuilding genius survives even today. The modern vessels still echo the principle of flexibility, wind harnessing, and seasonal timing pioneering in Indian Ocean. As the maritime archaeology in 2026 continues to unearth the hulls, the anchors, and the charts, the narratives of globalization is being rewritten. The so-called Age of Discovery, long credited to European explorer, was in truth born 1,000 years earlier in Indian Ocean, when Indian ships dared to cross the horizon that others feared. The forgotten fleet is no longer forgotten. It stands revealed as the silent architect of a global trade, proving that India did not merely participate in history, it steered it with sails that caught the monsoon and the mind that mapped the stars. So friends, if you have reached this far, please inform us from which city you are tuned in, and this will help us to determine the reach of our channel. Now let's continue with our discussion. The story of how ancient Indian maritime routes created the first global economy is one of the vision, courage, and astonishing technological mastery. So long before modern trade networks and the digital globalization, India's shipbuilders and navigators had already woven the worlds together through the rhythm of the monsoon wind and the pulse of ocean currents. From the harbor to Lothal and Dolaria in the Indus Valley to a bustling port of Kaviripattam and Muziris, the Indian sailor charted the course that connected the Africa, the Arabia, and Southeast Asia and beyond. Their ship crafted with the teak, coconut fiber ropes, and ingenious waterproofing resin were not merely vessel but floating labs of ancient engineering. So these routes carried more than spice and silk. They carried ideas, mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy across the continents. The Indian Ocean became a living map of exchange. Gold from Africa, frankincense from Arabia, silk from China met the cotton, pepper, and gemstone from India. The result was not just commerce, it was a birth of global consciousness. It was again a networking of a civilization learning from one to another. The ancient Indian navigator understood the monsoon rhythm so precisely that they could time voyage to harness its power, transforming seasonal wind into an artery of global trade. This maritime brilliance was underpinned by sacred geometry and astronomical precision. Shipbuilders aligned hull design with the cosmic ratio, believing that the harmony between the vessel and the universe ensures safe passage. So their technology was both spiritual and scientific, a fusion that made Indian ships legendary for their durability and speed. By the time the Roman coin began appearing in South Indian port, the world has already entered its first era of global economy, an economy born not in the imperial conquest, but in sharp navigation and mutual exchange. India's maritime routes were the invisible thread that stitched together continents, culture, and destination. So we have reached to the end of this interesting topic. Please like and subscribe our channel, and we look forward for your comment on this topic. See you in the next one very soon. Till then, take care.